When I was 19 years old, I was traveling around Colorado, and I met this native Alaskan man who was also traveling through the state. And we just hit it off. We fell hard, we fell fast. And a few days later, when his ride was ready to go, we didn't want to say goodbye yet. So I decided to drive him home to northern Alaska. That's right. It was this epic month-long road trip, camping all the way up through Canada. And when we arrived to his little cabin in Fairbanks, I just moved in with him straight away. My first ever live-in boyfriend, and we still had a lot to learn about each other. For instance, I found out that his dad was Native Alaskan and his mom is this tough German woman who had been living with the tribe for the last 40 years. She had learned the language and adapted to the culture. I also found out that my boyfriend cared a lot about having her approval. And furthermore, that she was a very conservative, old school Catholic. So I was very nervous what she must think about us living together before I even met her. But it took several months for us to meet because she lived up in the village that was about a 3-hour bush plane flight from Fairbanks. When she finally came down so we could meet, she made a reservation at her favorite restaurant. When we arrived, she was already seated in this booth, and it was a really wide booth, so there was no handshaking or anything. We slid in and started talking. She was very engaging and nice, and I thought it was going pretty well. Afterwards, we all walked out to the parking lot together. And when it was time to say goodbye, I said, "Well, it was so nice to meet you." And I did the thing that comes the most natural to me in the world. I threw my arms out wide for a hug. The reason hugging comes so naturally to me is because my little Jewish mother raised me with OCD levels of hugging. Hugging is how you say hello, it's how you say goodbye, it's how you show someone that you like them. I don't even have to think about it. It's just something I do. So there I am with my arms spread open wide to hug my boyfriend's mom goodbye. But to my absolute horror, she takes a step backwards and says, "I don't do that." Panicked, I say, oh, I'm so sorry, and I shoot my hand out instead. But she just shakes her head no, and quickly lights a cigarette and walks away. I was mortified, certain that I must have offended her. My boyfriend says, don't worry, that's just how she is. And then he tells me that he doesn't remember the last time he had hugged her. And yes, I agree that he could have shared this information with me beforehand. And then he tells me that he and his siblings had never even called her mom. Ever since they were babies, they had been calling her by her first name, Ginny. So getting used to a family that didn't hug was really difficult for me. Hugging is in my DNA. My mother literally hugs complete strangers all the time. But over the next couple years, my interactions with Ginny doesn't get any better. It's still this awkward, contactless hellos and goodbyes, and every single time, it leaves me feeling like she does not like me. 2 years into our relationship, my boyfriend and I move up to his hometown. It's a village of 500 people, almost all members of an indigenous Athabascan tribe, 8 miles north of the Arctic Circle, off the road system on the banks of the Yukon River. We move into this 12-foot by 12-foot ancient log cabin without running water or electric heating, but I have an outhouse that I have to carry a rifle to and from because of the wolves and grizzlies. It's a hard adjustment for me. A few days after we arrive, Ginny corners me and she says, "Kona, you have to stop acting this way or you're gonna get beat up or worse." She's referring to how friendly I am. She explains that there are very traditional gender roles in this tribe and that it's not customary for a woman to look a man in the eyes that she's not with. And if I don't stop being so friendly to everyone I meet, then someone's girlfriend or wife is going to kick my ass. She also tells me I need to stop wearing my very holy denim jeans because I'm showing too much skin. And of course, all of it just sounds like more proof that she hates me. A few weeks later, the phone rings, and it's Ginny. I answer the phone, and she says, "Kona, I've been waiting for you to invite me over for dinner." And I'm just thinking, oh, great. Once again, I have failed at being a woman. So first of all, Ginny is a famously picky eater, so cooking for her is just gonna give her another opportunity to judge me. And second, I don't even have a real stove. I just have this Dutch oven pot that sits on top of the 50-gallon drum that we use as a fireplace. But fine, Ginny wants to come to dinner, so I invite her. The day arrives, and I try my best to make a meal that I know she'll at least eat: tuna casserole. She comes inside, and the first thing she does is she goes over to the wall, and she takes down this little painting we have hanging up, and she puts it on the ground. And then she reaches in her bag, and she pulls out this, wall hanging thing and puts it up in its place, all without saying a word. And then she sits at the table, does her silent Catholic prayer, and starts eating. I am so confused. I look over to my boyfriend, and he's snickering a little bit, but he gestures that he'll tell me later. I look up at this thing, and honestly, it's kind of hideous. It's this mismatch of paints and feathers, but I try to be polite, of course, and so I smile and say, "Oh, thank you so much." She just nods, but in my head, I'm thinking, this is clearly a hex. She is trying to get rid of me. So we eat dinner in silence, and she leaves just as abruptly as she always does. The second the door shuts, I turn to my boyfriend and I say, "Okay, so what the hell is this thing?" And he is just cracking up, just laughing, and he says, "Well, we're married now." Yeah. So I guess she didn't hate me so much after all. Over the next few years, Ginny and I got closer. We never touched, but she showed her affection in other ways. She showed me how to sew and make winter clothing, how to prepare traditional foods, and she made me some of the most beautiful beadwork that I will treasure forever. And most of all, she taught me that just because a family doesn't hug, it doesn't mean they don't love each other. Oh, and when he and I finally broke up, it was the easiest divorce in the history of the world. All we had to do was take it down.